Dr. Angela Baptista. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today, I want to get you fired up about our guest. His name is Stephen Reider, and we're talking about his book, Where Did All These Gods Come From? Now, you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Stephen. Thank you so much for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Good morning, Dr. Angela, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being able to come and visit with us today. Now, as is the fashion here, before we start talking about your book, I would love for you to introduce yourself to perhaps those one or two people out there that are unfamiliar with you or with your work. So I have to ask, what makes you you?
Well, I am the youngest of four boys. I was raised in a Christian home. I'm a musician. I never really thought of myself as an author, and that didn't come about until 2014. I was 57 when I wrote my first book, and this one that we're talking about today is actually my second book. I'm a retired postal employee. I was married for 28 years, and I've been divorced for 14 years. But other than that, that's me.
I love it. I love it. Now, you answered the question about being an author, so thank you for doing that. Now, once you became an author, how did you view yourself? Meaning, you've gone through the entire process, and now your book is in your hands. You're now an author. How did you feel once you were able to take on that title?
Wow, that was an incredible moment. You never really understand the full scope of, I guess you would say, the power of the words, or just the whole sense. When the publisher gets on the phone and tells you, congratulations, you're now a published author, that was the moment I had to sit down. Because it was exciting, but it was overwhelming at the same time.
Absolutely. And I love asking that question because every author has their own version of that experience. And I think it really helps for that person who is like, I want to do that. I think I want to know what that feeling is like. Okay. I want to be a part of that group because it's true. I loved it when I held my first book and I was like, I can't believe it. Like, this is happening, so it really and truly is an amazing feeling. You are so right about that. Now, as far as this book is concerned, where did all the gods come from? I like the title. How did you come about such an interesting title?
Well, I am a big fan of, like, the Discovery Channel, and I kept seeing all of these programs talking about, like, the gods of Egypt, the gods of mythology, the gods of the Babylonians, of the Maya, the Inca, and the only question that kept coming to mind is, where did all these gods come from? And so I developed a theory that all the gods of mythologies are all based on stories that the Bible talks about of a race of giants that lived in the days of Noah called the Nephilim. And the Nephilim, that name actually means the fallen ones. So it's like they were the, say, the commanders, if you will, of a third of heaven's armies that had conspired with Lucifer to stage a coup in heaven. And so, what if you imagine, what if these commanders were named Zeus, Apollo, Odin, Ra, and so forth, all of these gods of the different mythologies? And that's basically where I started from.
And you're right. I think that many people have asked that question. Why does every culture seem to have something different, but yet there are some pieces that seem to kind of correlate no matter where you are in the world? I definitely understand where you're getting at there, and you're right. I watched that channel too, and it is quite interesting. Now, have there been any particular authors that have influenced the way that you write, the way in which you told your story?
Yes. I have always been a big fan of like John Grisham and Tom Clancy. I've read a lot of their novels. I love their novels.
Great authors.
And
yeah.
Yes. And so thinking of a way to tell my story, since I don't have any physical, tangible proof, then I had to make it into a story. And I'm also a fan of like the Indiana Jones movies. And so that's kind of where I based my character and made him kind of that same type, if you will, of character, a professor / archaeologist, and discovers a whole, the world, if you will, of these giants.
Now, taking all of that into account, were there any particular places or things or even shows that inspired you and you incorporated them into the book?
Absolutely. I think that part of writing fiction, if you can incorporate actual places and actual events that people know about, then it makes it more believable. And so there is actually a town called Gusen, Austria. It's kind of notorious in history in that it was one of the major concentration camps during the Jewish Holocaust. And just outside of Gusen, they have discovered a large tunnel system in the mountains, and it was basically a laboratory that was called Bergkristall. And so I incorporate that in the book because there was a story, again, on the Discovery Channel. There was a program that the host had been contacted. There was a small landslide that exposed a tunnel. And the further they went back in that tunnel, radiation started spiking. And they knew that they were near the entrance or another entrance into Bergkristall. Bergkristall right now is sealed because it's highly radioactive. So we don't know what went on in there. Another thing that I incorporated is there are labs here in the United States, DNA labs, that actually work for the FAA. And what they do is they take samples of bird strikes on airplanes to determine what species of bird, and that way if they have migratory patterns, then airplanes can be rerouted to avoid them so that you wouldn't have a situation like what happened with Captain Sully.
Yeah.
And so I incorporated that in the book as well.
Smart. That helps people, I think, follow along on the journey in which you're taking them
definitely.
while reading the book.
Yes,
Now,
and I also incorporate like places down in Chile, and in I know that there are copper mines and other mines that are down in there. That's a highly seismic area, and also since he is an archaeologist, Machu Picchu, which is one of the big places where the Inca were. So I have him as a world traveler, basically.
But like you said, you've highlighted some places that I think are in most people's consciousness. They're aware. They might not be able to point it out on the map, but they've heard of the place, or they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of a story of something going on there. So yeah, I think you picked great places. I can definitely understand that. Now, when it comes to the writing process, for every author, there are the ups and the downs. Some experience writer's block, some can't decide on the cover, others, do I use my name, do I use a pen name, all the like, right? So when you were writing, did you have any challenges, or were there any pros and cons to your process for getting your book the way in which you wanted it?
Certainly, there were several times that while I was writing, if I didn't like the way that it was going, it started heading to more of a dark area, and I don't like that. So I was like, well, let's back up and find out where it started to shift, and then move on from there and go in another direction. And as an author, you have the freedom to do that.
Right.
One of the things that I did, I was actually a school bus driver for Klein ISD, and what I would do, I would come off of my morning bus route, and I had a noonday route, so I didn't have time to go home. So what I would do, I would lock myself in my car, prop my computer on the steering wheel, put on a little bit of light jazz, and start typing. And that's basically how I wrote the book.
Oh, wow. When people are determined to do something, you're determined to do it. And I love the ingenuity of the human mind, right? It's like we are definitely gonna get in there and make it happen. I love it. Now, Stephen, it is almost time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
You can get a copy of my book on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or any online bookseller. You can also go to the Balboa Press bookstore, and you can get in touch with me on Facebook, Stephen Reider at Facebook. I'm there.
I love it. Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Stephen Reider, and we're talking about his book, Where Did All the Gods Come From? Now, Stephen, thank you so much for being on the show today. I want to ask, for so many authors, they write a book because, they feel as though I cannot hold on to all of this knowledge that I have, right? I'm working towards this legacy. Each one teach one. Others want to help instruct, self-help, Others just say, I don't know, God placed it on my heart, and I had to get this poetry out of my head. So that's my question for you. Why did you write this book? What was your inspiration?
My inspiration, actually, it's kind of a long story. I've been a musician, a worship leader for a number of years, and there was always this feeling that there was more that I could do. And I came home from church one day and turned on the TV, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Creflo Dollar was preaching. I can't tell you what his sermon was about, but at the end of the sermon, it was like he was talking to me. He said, if you feel that you're not doing enough, then pray this simple prayer. Just pray, God, use me as you see fit. So I did. And for 2 weeks, nothing happened. And you know how sometimes you hear God's voice, and it sounds almost like an audible voice, but it's inside you.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up one Saturday morning, 2 weeks later, to this voice inside me saying, all right, did you really mean what you said, or are you just giving me lip service? And I was like, well, good morning, Father. And so I said, Lord, if you're with me, I can do anything. He said, okay, I want you to write a book. And, I've heard all my life that God will take you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And the longest thing that I had written prior to that was a 10-page report for an English lit class 30 years prior. So if that is totally out of my comfort zone. But God has blessed it, and He's blessed me with it. So after I had written the first book, I had all my friends coming up to me saying, all right, when's the second book? What's it about? When's it coming out? And I was thinking, second book? And I have a very dear friend who is a retired pastor who pulled me aside and he told me, he said, Steve, God did not give you this gift for one book. How can you argue with that? So that's where I started thinking about and praying about, what am I going to write? And I started seeing all the programs on Discovery about all the different gods, and that's where this book came from.
I love it. I love it. I have often said that I think that God definitely has a sense of humor, right? The way that He interacts with us in our own little way, and like you said, it's as though it's an audible voice that you're able to hear, and it's the things that are said. I love that. Are you sure? Are you really going to do it? Or are you just kind of giving me lip service? It's like I would have just died laughing. It's like, okay, I hear you.
Yes, indeed.
I love it. I love it. That is a precious moment to me. I love that. Now, when you were writing, so many times you end up giving a piece of yourself to your story. Even when it's fiction, there's something that you've heard or something that you know, more than just your research or like hard facts, but you do put an element of your own personality in there.
Yes,
do you think that you have included any elements of yourself into any of the characters or any aspect of the book?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. My main character, Jake Steiner, is a musician. I know a musician's heart because I've been a musician all my life. So, naturally, he has some ways that are similar to me, but also his mentor, who is an older fellow, a guy named Miles Standish. Miles is more like me. his, I guess you would say, decision making, and the basic character, the way he acts, the way that he interacts with people, is more the way that I would.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely. I mean, you draw from what you know, and you write from what you know. And when you write basically from the heart, you're naturally going to put part of yourself into what you write.
True. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the difference between theory and fiction?
That is very interesting. Theory is all about supposition to explain an event or a thing. While fiction, and this is something that just blew my mind when I read this, one of the definitions of fiction is a belief or statement that is false, but is held to be true because it is expedient to do so. I saw that and I was thinking, oh my goodness, there are entire religions based on evolution. And that is something that has not been proven, cannot be proven, and will not be proven. And yet people hold that to be true because they don't want to acknowledge the God of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You are so right. I've only heard one person, and it was not in mixed company, so to speak, say that. It's like we can't get there. With the whole chain, and I want everyone to picture, that little diagram that shows you from the beginning to man, and it's like, this page right here, from here to here, this is all theory. This is all just, we can't prove that. And it's like, well, I think we could have told you that from
really.
The last one of us, but sure. Thanks for saying it out loud. So I definitely have to agree with you on that. I love it. That is a great answer. Now, for anyone who says, you know what, I'm interested. I want to pick up a copy of the book. What do you want for your readers to make sure that they take away from your book?
Well, I would like for the readers to be able to see that you can be a Christian and not have to be walking around in suit and tie all day and be all stuffy. We have a life. Also, one thing that I bring out in there is these giants had tried once to stage a coup in heaven. Once they couldn't do that, they tried to contaminate God's perfect creation. And now it seems like man is also trying to do what they were trying to do and contaminate God's perfect creation. Let God's creation be. Don't try to contaminate it. Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you say that, because when I'm doing workshops, not as a radio host, but as a pastoral counselor, and we're talking about self-sabotaging behaviors, and we're talking about, trying to get your life path, your journey, your life cycles correct. And that's one of the things that we have to really kind of remind people of. It's like God doesn't need you to help him to be God. If you can do it, then you would do it under your own power. But you're praying, you're asking God to help you because you've fallen short. So it's like, stop doing that. So you are telling the truth on that one. I love it. I love it. Now, what would you ultimately like to happen with your book? I have so many authors that I've spoken with, and they're like, I would love for it to turn into a docuseries or a miniseries. I'd like to see it in the movies. I'd like for it to become something that's taught at a university or used in Sunday school. Do you have a bigger hope or wish in a way in which your book could be utilized?
Basically, all of the above. Everything that you just said, I would love for happen. I would love to see it as a movie, in a miniseries. I would love to see it also in Christian schools as part of the elective reading.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be fine because there is nothing that is obscene or vulgar in this book, and I think it would be good because it also stresses family values as well. So I think I would love to see it in the Christian schools and universities and if I could see it on silver screen, that would be awesome.
Well, you never know how God is going to utilize your work and what's going to happen. I tell people that all the time. I simply prayed for my podcast and your radio show. My radio show has done far more than what I ever hoped. And I ended up with a TV show. So it's like, look at God, be God, so you never know
indeed.
what is ultimately going to happen. And it is such an amazing thing to see how God is able to utilize us for just kingdom building and just really exposing the masses to something that God gave us that we thought was a simple idea that needed to get out, and it changes the lives of so many.
Absolutely.
I think that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Now, my last question for you, and that is about a sequel. I know that many writers say, I thought this was going to be one book. I thought it was going to be two. 6 books later, they're like, they're still coming. So my question to you is, have you been bitten by the writer's bug? Do you want to continue to write? What's next for you there?
I actually have started a little bit on a sequel, but I've hit a block on that. I have written another book that I haven't published that it would be on another totally different subject matter. But I still have the bug to write. I mean, it's a gift that God gives, and when He gives you a gift, you can't walk away from it. So yeah,
true.
definitely I have that.
You are so right, and I think my listeners have heard me. And if they missed that interview, there was an author that was on. He said the same thing. I tried to duck it. It kept pulling on my heartstrings, and he's like, after 7 years or so, he was like, okay, fine, I'll write the book. And he's like, boy, am I happy that I finally gave in, because it has led to so much more. And it's like, see, you just can't shake what God has for you. So it's like you need to do it. So I'm so glad. You really can't. I love it. Well, Stephen Reider, thank you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I've enjoyed talking with you today. So I want to ask one last reminder of you. If you could remind everyone of the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
The name of my book is Where Did All These Gods Come From? You can find it on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or any online bookseller. You can also go to the Balboa Press online bookstore. It's there. And you can stay in touch with me on Facebook.
I love it. Stephen, thank you again for spending time with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Angela.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I like to do on my show? I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today, we want to get you fired up about how you can trust God, that you can still go to Him no matter good times or bad times. He is still there waiting for you. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea because we're about to get started. My guest today is author April Joy Spring, and we are talking about her trilogy, Fear Not. So we have Fear Not, Trust Me, and Be Still. Hello, April. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Well, we're definitely going to talk about your books, but as is the fashion here on the show, we always ask, a little bit about who you are. There may be some folks out there who are unfamiliar with you or with your work. So, April, what makes you you? What made you the writer that you are today?
When I was born, I was born into a family of 10 children, and I was number 8, and it was a migrant farm working family down in Texas. And so some of the, and then I was adopted when I was about 4, and moved different places. But the main thing in the books and the stories, I do bring some of that out. That talks a little bit about one of the characters has a life kind of similar to mine was before I was adopted. But I'm not sure what makes me, but I love life. I love people. I love God. I love using His scriptures to encourage people. And that's what these books are based on, are the scriptures. Fear not, for I am with you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and be still and know that I am God.
I love that. Now, being an author, is that something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that was just the next thing on your journey of life?
Yes. Well, I started this book like 30-something years ago. My husband had been on a trip, and I dreamt, and I have 3 little kids, and I dreamt that he had died in a plane crash. And so that got me to thinking, what would I do if he really did? And I figured, I was living in Michigan at the time, and I thought, well, I would probably go back to my hometown in Texas. And then so when I started the book years ago, it was going to just be a romance. She was going to go to Texas, meet up with her hot high school crush, and then they were going to get married and live happily ever after. Well, once I started having children and life got busy, et cetera, that book got put on the back shelf. So about 10 years ago, God woke me up in the middle of the night and said, you need to finish that book. And I had completely forgotten about the book. So I'm like, okay, which book is that? So anyway, I started writing these stories. I took a writing course, so I did write some things, but I've never had anything published. So this was a giant leap of faith to get these books out and get them published.
Yes, that is amazing. I love it how people never really know exactly when the inner author is going to come out. I kind of recall one person going, yes, when I was 16, I said exactly when I turned 25, I was going to write a book. No one ever knows. I had one person come on, and they talked about just saying, no, God, that's not what I want to do. Fast forward 10 years, it's like, okay, God, I give in.
Right. I wish I'd started these books back in my 40s, but, as it was, on my first book came out on my 60th birthday, so that was an awesome birthday present.
Yes.
So,
that is awesome. What a way, to celebrate your birthday. It's like, I'm official. I'm an author. That's amazing. I love it. I love that. I love it. Now, were there different events in your life, and thank you so much for mentioning that each one is based off of a scripture, and I think that is amazing into itself, that you had that foresight to do that. But are the books based on any particular event in your life at a particular time?
Well, the story does take place during the 9/11 crisis. So, I kind of brought all that in, and all the turmoil that's going on in life right now with, the instability of our government, and et cetera, et cetera. So that comes through the story. And like I said, when I often thought, what would I do if my husband passed? Where would I go? And so I kind of went from there, like I would move back to Texas because that's where I'm originally from. And, what would happen then? And so that's kind of where all this goes. And I was going to say it is based on my little hometown in Texas. I don't know if you're familiar with Texas that much, but there's this cute little hometown called Hillsboro, and it's based on that town. It's not, the name has been changed, because I had to take privileges, but yeah, so anyway, a lot of that is the same. So it's kind of based on that life.
And I think you're right. So many times people do use real life experiences. Of course, they change the names, so no one can definitely, point to another person and say, you are Jack. But
right.
At the same time, if you're familiar enough with an author, many times you can figure out, that reminds me of maybe these two people, or it's a blending. And if we listen to some of the stories of some famous folks that are in TV or the film industry, they do say we base characters on folks that are familiar with, to us.
Right.
It's a blending of a neighbor and our favorite aunt, or an uncle, or your dad's coworker, whatever it is. So we do pull on real life people. With that being said, are the characters in your book based on any real person or a blending of real people?
The characters in the book are based on some of my high school friends, and they can pick themselves out. I changed the names again, like you say, we changed the names, because I don't want, if they say, well, you picked me out as such and such, I'll be like, oh, no, I don't think so, because I don't want to put people in certain roles, you know how that is. But, yeah, some of it is based on real events that happened, in my younger life, and, of course, characters and that kind of thing. So there is a little bit of truth in it. It's not all fiction.
But I think that adds a little bit of mystery to any book, especially if you know the person, or they're from your hometown or whatever, and it's like, hey, they wrote a book, let me pick up a copy and let's see what we discover. So I think that's amazing. I have a friend of mine who used a pen name to write her book, and of course she changed the names of the characters, but we all said, ooh, we know exactly who that person is. You have to have grown up with her, of course, to figure it out.
Right.
So you're right. The majority of people don't know who the characters are, and of course I think most authors are really kind. They don't do they don't throw anyone under the bus or anything like that. So you guys are still very mindful with that. So I do kudos for you guys doing that. Now, I want to take a little bit of time to give you an opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit about the 3 books before we really concentrate on the latest release. So can you tell us a little bit about Fear Not?
Okay, Fear Not is based on the scripture, Fear not, for I am with you. There are like 300 verses in the Bible that talk about not fearing. God says just don't be afraid of man, don't be afraid of circumstances, just fear not. The only fear that we should have is reverential awe of God, and that's, they can call that fear, but it's more an awe. And so in the book, when my main character, Christina, goes through these trials, she learns to put her trust in God and not to fear, and to keep stepping forward no matter what happens. And in the books, all three of them, there's circumstances that are just mind-boggling. Sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, how could this happen? But through it all, her faith is strong. In the first book, Fear Not, it kind of gives you a whole background of the town and all the events that lead up to these kind of things. And then can I go and talk about the second one real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
So the second book of the trilogy is Trust Me. Yes. Tell us about Trust Me.
Okay. Trust Me is a continuation of the first book. Same characters mostly, different situations, different trials. I do bring in a few different characters because, you want to keep the story going. Some of the stories I've had some dreams, some vision-type dreams that God has given me, and that's where I came up with the Fear Not book. Well, in both of them, the little girl in the story has these dreams, and so she interprets them. And anyway, that's where I came up with the titles for Fear Not and Trust Me. And then as it goes on, Trust Me, like I say, it's a continuation, and then we go into book 3, and that kind of ties everything together. Book 3 is Be Still, which is based on Be Still, for I'm with you. Yes, Be Still. The second one is Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and then Be Still and know that I am God. And again, all these trials and things test her faith as well as her friends, her family, et cetera, et cetera. And so Be Still kind of ties everything together and gives you like a little surprise ending. So, so they are, they're all connected.
Well, April, it is almost time for us to go to break. But before we do, if you could please, can you remind everyone of the title of your book? Where can they get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Okay. The titles are Fear Not, Trust Me, and Be Still. And you can get in touch with me on my website, which is apriljoyspring.com. I also have a Gmail account. It's a52spring@gmail.com. I also go through a publishing company called Ex Libris, and it's just X, the letter X, Libris, LIBRIS.com, and you can get books from there. You get them from Barnes & Noble. You can also go online and get them from Amazon. So they're available, in all these situations. And plus, there is an ebook.
So already, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. My name is Dr. Angela Dalton, and I am talking with author April Joy Spring today. We are discussing her trilogy, Fear Not. I love what she has done with the title. The first book is Fear Not. The second book is Trust Me. And now we are going to talk about the third book of the trilogy, and that is Be Still. I love it. So, April, my question for you is, with everything that's going on in the world, and many people are working from home now, and we've adjusted to our new normals, do you feel that your book, Be Still, has any relevance to anything that's going on in the world today?
Yes, just in the title alone, Be Still and Know That I Am God, because sometimes we do get caught up in all these things, and we fear and we worry, and we stress out and we get angry sometimes, and God just tells us, just kind of take a breath and just be still and know that I'm in control. And my character in this book, there's several characters that are going through all these kind of struggles that we go through on a daily basis. And, Christina is reminded all the time, to just be still. Stop worrying. Stop running around, like a chicken with your head cut off, like my grandma used to say. And just, just take a breath and be still and just know that I am with you. I am in control, and it will all work out in the end. And like I tell people a lot of times, I said, I've read the book, I've read the Bible, so I know how it ends. And, it's a good ending. God wins. So, you just have to trust in that. So, so be still, and the only way you can really trust God and to not fear is to be still and get into His Word and study and just relax in knowing that it's going to be okay. And my characters do eventually come to that realization, after all this stuff is going on. So, in today's society, it is challenging to be still.
Yeah, it really is. But you are so right, because we do need to learn how to pace ourselves. So many times we do run around like chickens with our heads cut off, and it's like over here, over here, and over here, and over here, and then someone will come along and just say, breathe, down, rest. And it's like, have you prayed about it? Have you, gone to that person and maybe said something like, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry to let you out. It's like, let's not worry. Let's not bring that upon ourselves. So you are so right. And heavens forbid, we don't need anything new to worry about with the whole pandemic affecting the earth, at the same time. So I hear you. I hear you there. Now, usually I ask a question that's along these lines when we're able to, especially get out and about, and we were able to go on book tours and do book signings and all of that. But perhaps people have been able to reach out to you in a different way, even though we're dealing with the pandemic. But how has your response been from those who have picked up a copy of your book? How have your books blessed them?
Well, and I don't mean this in a bragging fashion, but I've had many people come back to me and say, oh, my goodness, your book just really touched my heart. In fact, I had a woman from Texas call me and just out of the blue and said, I read your first book, Fear Not, and I have to tell you, it just really touched my heart because my husband died recently, and in the book, Christina's husband, I don't want to give too much away, but he does die, and so this is why she's going back to Texas. But anyway, so this lady said, her husband died recently, and just the way I presented, life after death and heaven and all that kind of stuff really encouraged her and blessed her heart. So that, even if it just touches one person, in a deep, emotional, spiritual way, then it's all worth it. The blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, of writing these books, that just is amazing. I've also been able to do speaking engagements, which I love to do, because mostly to women, but I have done, a couple of sessions with men as well, like a group session. And we talk about the fear and the trust and the being still. And the feedback is wonderful. It's just wonderful.
No, and you are so right. I remember having the thought when I was a younger person and hearing someone say, if it only helps one person, then it was all worth it. And it wasn't that I didn't believe them, I just didn't fully understand. And I just remember thinking like, that's a curious statement to me. Like, yes. I wonder how that really feels, okay, I took it at face value, was like, I believe you, but seems like there's so much more to that answer that I don't quite understand yet. Let me live a little.
Right.
On my own book, have someone else do it, or do a webinar and have someone, like you say, come up and say, oh my goodness, that really, had an effect. And it was that aha moment, like, so that's how that feels. You really are like, thank God, that one person. It was worth it. It really and truly was worth it. And it is so true. And I think that says a lot about your heart. You do want to help someone get through something to let them know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Now, even though I know that you've written this trilogy, and some authors will say, I'm done. That's it. It's like, I wrote 3 books. What more are you asking of me? But I always ask the question, do you think that there are more books? Maybe you change it up a little bit or whatever, or continue to write along these same lines. But do you think that there are more books inside of you?
Oh, yes. My mind is always going. I wake up in the middle of the night with dreams or some, or just a thought, and then I, process that. But I do want to make a fourth book in this trilogy, and it will fill in like some of the gaps. Like at the end of book 3, the Be Still book, there is a 5-year gap, and so I want to fill that in from one of the kids' perspectives. Yeah. So that book definitely is in the works. And then I wouldn't mind doing some stories about my family, my birth family. I did get to meet them all and, and have established a relationship with them. So, it'd be nice to honor them and some of their stories. So, yeah, there's books coming. I just gotta sit down and do it.
Right. Do the hard work. I hear you. And, I think that would be nice because there are so many more adopted people that many times we don't even know that the person has been adopted. When you think about it, unless the person just really and truly is such an oddball in the family, you just take it at face value that these are their parents. And it is what it is. But to be able to write about that experience and to give someone else out there the hope or encouragement and to keep going if they're trying to look for their birth parents, or do I really want a relationship with them, or how do I honor my adopted parents but still have a relationship with my birth parent? So I think that's an amazing thing to be able to write about. And most definitely, when you're done with that, remember us, you'll have to come back on and share. I think people will be inspired about that. I love it. I love it. Now, your writing process, you have written 3 books, so it's not like you don't know what you're doing. You definitely do. So I want to kind of ask you some questions along those lines. So the first question is, for that person who says, April, I think there's a book in me. I think I can do it. And I need to sit down and start typing. Do you have any advice for someone who they really want to do it, but they're not sure how to get started?
Well, I stepped out in faith because, like I say, I've never really written anything before this, but it was all God inspired. But what I tell people, if you really, if you have this story in you, and I think everybody has a story in them because we all have separate lives, and each one of us has been touched by an event one way or another. And but the thing is, what I try to encourage people to do is just start. Just sit down, write out your thoughts, and then have a friend or have someone, a teacher, somebody that you might know, to read it through and kind of help edit it. I did that. I have a good friend that has a doctorate in English, and so she read through my stuff and kind of helped with the grammar and syntax and all that kind of stuff. And then I had another friend who proofreads papers for her husband's business and that kind of stuff, and so she read it. So anyway, I reached out to my friends and I said, I can take criticism. It's okay. Just, constructive. Don't hurt my feelings. But anyway, so they went through it. Yeah. And they're like, well, we don't want to be real hard on you, but, you really need to do this or that. And so I took their advice and I went through, and then I got hold of a publisher, and how can I say this? In their contract, they do edit some of it. They will go through and edit like the first 200 pages or something. So that gives you an idea of, what they expect and what, how to do the story and that kind of stuff. So, there are so many publishers that are out there that are people that will help you. And like I said, I just stepped out in faith because I had no clue what to do about this. And I just sat and prayed about it, and then the words came. So, yeah, that's it. It sounds simple, kind of simplistic, but that's how I processed it. I'm sure other authors have a different way of doing things. I have friends who have self-published, and done the whole kit and caboodle by themselves, but I didn't feel secure enough in myself to take that step, so I did go through a publisher.
Well, thank you. you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I've enjoyed talking to you, and thank you so much for sharing. So, again, before I let you go, can you remind everyone what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Okay. The titles of the book are Fear Not, Trust Me, and Be Still. So it's a Fear Not trilogy is what I kind of call it. You can get in touch with me on my website, which is apriljoyspring.com. My email is a52spring@gmail.com. And you can also get the books from Amazon and Barnes & Noble and exlibris.com. They are the publishers of the books. And, if you want to get in touch with me, that would be awesome. I will be glad to encourage or, send you information or send you the books.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Joy, for spending time with me here today.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it as well. This is kind of fun. I like doing this.
I love it. Like a little bit of girl chat. I love it. So listen, thank you for spending time with us as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with me here today, and I thank you for doing so. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember, you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.